So thank you very much, you all. So we now enter the one of the last talk of the Privacy Engineering Conference, and I invite on the stage François-Xavier Cao, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Lille, specialist of European legal frameworks perspective for APIs, and also CTO, CPO, and co-founder of Alias Law, a startup that develops tools to help developers and companies to implement GDPR for real in the IT systems. And today, François-Xavier will speak about the data portability report you've done with the Alias team. Is that right?
That's it, absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
Great. So I dropped the mic. It's all yours. Good presentation, and see you.
Thank you. So yes, to start, I would like to tell you about a little report that we wrote at alias.dev, corresponding to a study that we conducted a few months ago, in which we tried to help people using their right to data portability, providing them with legal advices and tips for free. Because this was the opportunity for us to also observe what was the state of data portability. Is to say, nowadays, how companies answers the request they receive when someone asks for the data portability. So I won't give too much detail about the report, because this is something that we already talked about in a previous talk at Apidays. So if you're really interested in getting all the details, I invite you to download just the report on alias.dev. You will find it in the resources section. But I will highlight some points of the report that are relevant to the goal of this presentation. So the first thing is that we categorize 6 ways that data portability was broken by companies. And among the 6 ways, the first one was that personal data was considered too difficult to provide. It's to say that for, according to the Article 20 of the GDPR, data portability isn't supposed to be respected, of course, but if it is too difficult for or infeasible for technical reason, then companies are not obliged actually to provide the data that the user was asking them to provide. So here we have an example that was the one of WhatsApp, and actually one of our participants asked WhatsApp to send him back his data in the machine readable format. And here is the response that WhatsApp sent him. And you can see that they were telling us that it was not possible for them to provide this participant with his data, because they didn't have access to this data, because everything was encrypted using a key that was not that was just stored actually on the device of the user. But surprisingly, when you take a look at the documentation of WhatsApp, you can see that you can do an extract, a dump of your data, of all your messages and the conversation you have with your friends, and that this backup, this could be done directly on Google Drive. And surprisingly, here the key encryption is not a problem anymore. So that was something that was surprising. Another thing that was also problematic is the fact that personal data was transmitted, when it was transmitted, could be considered as an empty file. It's to say that it was not actually relevant to the user, because as you can see here, the concept of data provided by user, which is the scope of data that should be provided within the use of the right to data portability, is something that is subject to interpretation. And here, normally, according to these guidelines of the former G29, we should have the broader understanding of this notion. However, in practice, we can see that it's not actually the case. And I invite everyone having a Facebook account here, using the export and download functionality, to download the takeout. It's to say just a set of data containing all the data under machine readable format and also under a human readable format. This is actually an interesting way to provide an answer to that kind of data portability requests. However, if you take a look, you pay attention to the content of for example, here, the list of friends that you have on Facebook, you can see that only the name and the timestamp of the moment when you become a friend with someone is provided, or provided. It's to say that if you, for example, have the will to just switch from Facebook to another social network, you can bring with you your social graph, because for example, it's possible that some people might not have the possibility to be identified using a unique identifier, an ID, because it's not provided through this extraction. Another thing is that personal data was delayed from being provided. It's to say that, from a legal point of view, companies should give an answer to any requests of data subjects under a period of 30 days. However, when you are in the shoes of the data subject, 30 days could be a bit discouraging because it seems so long. We live in a world where people are used to have everything right on time, so it's really discouraging for the main part of people. Another problem was that personal data was fragmented. More than that, I would rather say that the data subject experience was fragmented. It's to say that when you want to ask for the portability of your data to many companies, every company will have its own way to manage and handle your request. It's to say that, for example, sometimes you will have to send an email to the DPO. Sometimes you will be able to download a takeout, for example, like Facebook or Twitter do. But and sometimes you have to use a specific contact form dedicated to that end. So this can also be confusing for people that are not privacy aware of privacy or aware of GDPR requirements or obligations. This is also, as I said, a problem. But we also put in relief possible solutions in this report, and one of the main solutions was that we need simplifications for the data subject to actually understand and do what they have to do to actually request for the portability of their data. And to ease their experience, we should standardize the way we create portability path. And we will highly recommend to use takeouts because it's like very quicker than any other way that we experience, but also it's actually more understood by the people, by the data subjects. And of course, we also recommended to impose the API neutrality for platforms and monopolies. It's to say that we should ensure an equal access to data and resources that are interfaced by APIs. And this is obviously not the case when you read the terms of services, as Monica Posada said. You can observe that sometimes some statements might be maybe too in breach of some competition law, or maybe in breach of the GDPR, or maybe just too complicated to be understood by the developers. So, but rather than, as I said, go a bit deeper, too deep, in the details of the report, I would like to tell you about something that is complementary with what is developed in this report. And this is inspired from my own experience and also from the experience of DPOs that I talked with. Because as a former DPO, I know that the work of data mapping and GDPR compliance plans never end. It's to say that company always change over the time. You have new colleagues joining the team, you have new tools that you want to try to use, and maybe you have new goals that you want to achieve. So a company is always moving. But then on the other side, we can see that GDPR compliance is static, and most of the time then disconnected from reality. It's to say that you are only compliant or aware of your compliance when you do a GDPR compliance assessment or audit. However, the day after that, a change might happen, an event might occur, so that the whole assessment might be, if not invalid, just partially not reflecting the reality. So what we can say is that for the GDPR to be enforced, we need companies, compliance states to be always up to date. And this is something that is, from a human perspective, really hard to achieve. So here is the question. How can we switch from static to stateful GDPR compliance? In my perspective, this is a personal opinion, of course, but I think that the DevRegOps approach could be the answer to that problem. What is the DevRegOps? To understand this concept, we can talk about what happened a bit 20 years ago, I think, about the problem that developers had to deal with when they had to deploy their code in production. When they developed software solutions, they had to deploy the code, and they also had to ask to ops, it's to say to the persons in charge of deploying their code, to do so. However, there were problems because of many reasons, and so that these ops were seen as, hindrances. They were seen as people interfering with the good work of the whole global deployment encoding process. So to solve this problem, a large set of tools and services appeared across the world, mainly AWS, of course, and the DevOps culture erased. It's to say that now developers have the tools to manage their code and deploy their code. But 10 years later, another problem that looked a bit like the one that we just talked about appeared, is the one that it consisted in the fact that security became important, or at least the awareness of cybersecurity became important. So that now you have new persons that are not the ops, but the chief information security officers, telling the people, please tell me that you can ensure that there is no vulnerability or cyber threat within your code. And this is actually really difficult to affirm. So developers were really blocked and felt really bad about the deployment or the absence of deployment of their code because of this kind of subject. So another set of tools appeared, like ones like, for example, Screen or Datadogs, and the DevSecOps culture erased. And now we are facing a new problem that looks a lot like the two prior ones that I just talked about. It's the one of the regulation and compliance. And for that, we could propose such the same approach like the DevRegOps, is to say, include the regulation and compliance requirements inside the code, so that developers can work with DPOs and obviously can handle in a proper manner using dedicating tools and methods to that end to manage privacy and compliance. So when you take and you pay attention a bit more to privacy, if you apply the DevRegOps approach to privacy, you realize that you need privacy engineers. Who are these privacy engineers? Privacy engineers are just developers empowered with concrete DevRegOps solutions or tools designed to implement legal advices and data protection requirements. It's to say that now we are focusing on implementation more than just declaration and design. So to make it possible, to make it reality, the goal would be that companies' GDPR compliant state should be reactive, like be able to change every time there is a change or an event, that occurs within the information system, or that is interesting and relevant to GDPR compliance. These changes could be related, for example, to privacy and security policies. Could it be, for example, the contents of the processing records drafted by the DPO, or even maybe just the security policy drafted by the CISO. Another thing is that legal and jurisprudence evolve over the time. And of course, many changes of that kind could affect the compliance of companies. The companies itself evolves, as we said before. So that kind of changes could also be relevant to the compliance state, the GDPR compliance state. And last but not least, the actions due to the data subjects themselves. Is to say that, for example, when they subscribe, when they erase, when they ask for be unsubscribed to from a mailing list or something like that, these are actions that have legal consequences, legal implications that should be taken into account when you want to refresh the GDPR compliance state. So to do that, we have to be able to watch for these events that are relevant to refresh this GDPR compliance state. And if there are developers here, and especially front-end developers here that are attending to this talk, I would like to say that it looks a bit like the problems that were solved by the JavaScript front-end framework, like, for example, Vue.js or React.js, because they were facing a problem that was linked to the fact that the front-end application should be evolving at the same time as the back-end information send information, but also at the same time when users were doing actions that should normally imply document object model changes on the web pages. So this is really something that could be compared to that kind of approach. So what is the company GDPR compliance state made of? As you might already know, the compliance of a company highly depends on the one of its data processors. But also you have to be able, as we said, to compute and refresh your compliance state, taking into account the specific context, the specific compliance state of each personal data that is processed within your information system, requiring indeed something to be able to watch for these events, the events that are going to refresh these compliance state. So from a human perspective, this is impossible to do it manually because a DPO cannot be everywhere, and that's perfectly normal. But the DPO, as we just we had the pleasure to hear about in the discussion just before this presentation, should be involved in every relevant GDPR concerns. So to illustrate this the thing, I would like to propose you to consider a fake company that we could call Fake Invest Corporation. This is an investment web platform that could provide, for example, to its users investments products fitting with the profile of each investor. So there is a profiling processing here. And if you follow, for example, here the user experience of each one of their customers, they visit, they sign up, they log in, and they look for new investment products. They invest money, and then there is an algorithm that try to understand what could be the future products that could be interesting for their future investments. So we can see here that there are 3 or at least 2 kind of personal data that are involved here. The one that are provided by user directly using, for example, a subscription form, and the one that are provided by user during the use of the services. It's to say when they click somewhere, when they do a research, when they invest actually money, and of course the one that are technically linked to the use of their solutions. For example, the IP address, the logs, that kind of things. And there are other kind of personal data that are induced from the profiling that was performed over the other personal data. These personal data coming from the profiling activities are also something that is subject to the GDPR compliance. So if we take a look at the whole architecture of this fake investment corporation, we could see that here they are using many services to provide the software as a service. The first thing is that they perform profiling using AWS servers. They store data concerning data subjects in Firebase. They have a CRM that is Salesforce, and of course, for recommendations, they use Algolia. Now, let's imagine that after the profiling was performed, for any given reason, the data subject could ask for the portability of his data. So now, the fact that that kind of request is sent to the data controller could be considered as an event, as you can see here. So here, the occurrence of that event implies the fact that we have to select only the data that should be concerned to be by the provision of the takeout that we want to send to the data subject who sent the request. So to that end, you can just thanks to a DevRegOps tool, use the fact that you already stored every event-based action, that happened before, and then you are able to select only the data that you have to actually provide. Because, as I said, normally the scope of data that should be provided to data subjects using their right to data portability is only the data that were provided by the data subject himself. So this way you can generate takeout directly so that data portability become possible. So this is something that is important here that I want to underline is the fact that we are now in the middle of the rise of a new ecosystem of DevRegOps tools and methods. All the day we had the opportunity to hear about, for example, the privacy engineering work of Jan Oliver, the catalog language developed by Denis Merigout. We can see also that, for example, Maïf developed an approach that is based that I just described to you. And you can see that the CNIL here wrote, as Jérôme Gorin talked about today, a guide for developers. All of these things are useful tools for DevRegOps. And to conclude this presentation, I would like to tell you that time has come for less compliance declaration and more implementation, because we now know that we have people that can be, as we heard about, that are senior enough to design the policies. Also, developers now should be involved in GDPR compliance management using DevRegOps tools and methods, because this is something that makes possible the collaboration between DPOs and developers. And this is something that is important because we now live in a world where the code is law. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, let me know. It would be a pleasure to answer it.
Thank you very much, François-Xavier. It was a tremendous presentation. We are just a little bit late, so I will have only one question, and you can answer with yes, no.
Sorry for a bit.
So, does the problem of the portability comes from a technical solution or from legal enforcement?
I would say that it's both, because the thing is, from a legal perspective, the right to the data portability is now provided by the Article 20 of the GDPR. So maybe the problem from legal's perspective would be that it's too there is too much abstraction. It's say we should mandate actually APIs or tools to give to help developers or technical people to implement in concrete data portability. That's the missing piece, I think. So as I said, it's from my point of view, it's both a technical and legal problem.
Okay, thank you very much, François-Xavier. So yes, we understand that the missing piece is the tool. So thank you again very much for your presentation, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you very much.